The corridor was silent. Too silent for a place that was supposed to be filled with royal staff and security. But on this particular afternoon, in a quiet hallway of Kensington Palace, something was happening that no one was supposed to see. A royal guard named Daniel stood at his post near the private wing. He'd been stationed there for 2 years. He knew the routines, knew the schedules, knew when to look forward and when to pretend he hadn't heard anything. But what he heard now made his blood run cold. A woman's voice, sharp, cutting, filled with venom, and then, quieter, a sob. Daniel's eyes shifted toward the door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar. Light spilled through the crack, and the voices were coming from inside. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" The first voice was unmistakable. Meghan. Her tone was laced with contempt. "With your perfect smile and your perfect wave, the people's princess." "It's pathetic." There was no response. Just the sound of someone trying not to cry. "You're weak," Meghan continued. "You've always been weak. That's why they walk all over you. That's why no one respects you." Daniel's jaw tightened. He shouldn't be hearing this. He definitely shouldn't be reacting to it. His job was to stand still, to be invisible, to let the royals handle their own affairs. But then he heard it. Kate's voice, broken, shaking. "Please, just stop." That's when Daniel knew. He couldn't just stand there anymore. If you're already feeling the tension in this story, hit that subscribe button now. Because what happens next will shock you. Daniel had seen Kate Middleton dozens of times. Always composed. Always graceful. The kind of person who could smile through anything. But the voice he was hearing now wasn't that person. This was someone who'd been pushed too far. Someone who was breaking. He took a breath. Protocols ran through his mind. Don't interfere with family matters. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't step out of position. But another protocol rang louder. Protect those who cannot. Protect themselves. Daniel moved toward the door. His boots were silent on the thick carpet. He reached the frame and paused, listening. "You don't belong here," Meghan was saying. "You never did. You're just some girl who got lucky. And now you're stuck playing dress-up for the rest of your life." Kate's voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" "Because someone needs to tell you the truth. Everyone else is too polite. Too British. But I'm not." It was a pause. "You're nothing, Kate, and deep down, you know it." That was enough. Daniel stepped into the doorway. Not all the way into the room, just enough to be seen. His red uniform filled the frame. His expression was neutral, but his presence was anything but. Both women turned. Kate was standing near the window, arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes were red. Tears streaked her face. She looked small, vulnerable, nothing like the confident duchess the world saw. Meghan stood in the center of the room, hands on her hips. Her expression shifted the moment she saw Daniel's surprise, then irritation. "What are you doing?" Meghan demanded. "This is a private conversation." Daniel didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. A wall of red and black. His eyes went to Kate. She was staring at him wide-eyed, as if she couldn't believe someone had actually walked in. "I said, what are you doing?" Meghan's voice rose. "You don't have permission to be here," Daniel finally spoke. His voice was calm, steady. "I heard raised voices, ma'am. Protocol requires me to ensure everyone's safety." It was a lie. Sort of. But it was the only thing he could say that wouldn't get him fired on the spot. Meghan's eyes narrowed. "We're fine. You can leave." Daniel didn't move. "Did you hear me?" Meghan stepped forward. "I said leave." "With respect, ma'am," Daniel said quietly, "I'll need to hear that from both parties." His eyes went to Kate again. She was still frozen, still staring at him. And then slowly, something shifted in her expression. Relief, gratitude, hope. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Meghan cut her off. "You're out of line." "Soldier, perhaps," Daniel replied. "But I'm not leaving." The air in the room went electric. Meghan's face flushed with anger. Kate looked like she might collapse from relief. and Daniel stood perfectly still, knowing he'd just crossed a line that could end his career, but some things were worth the risk, and protecting someone who couldn't protect themselves, that was one of them. Meghan's eyes were blazing now. She took another step toward Daniel, her entire posture radiating authority, or at least what she thought authority looked like. "Do you know who I am?" she said, voice low and dangerous. Daniel didn't flinch. "Yes, ma'am." "Then you know I can have you removed from this palace in 5 minutes. That's your right, ma'am." Meghan blinked. She clearly hadn't expected that response. Most people folded when she applied pressure. But Daniel wasn't most people. He'd served in combat zones before joining the Royal Guard, a verbal confrontation in a palace. Hallway didn't scare him. What did concern him was Kate. She still hadn't moved from the window. Her arms were still wrapped tightly around herself, as if she were trying to hold the pieces together. Her face was pale, her breathing uneven. "Kate," Meghan said, turning back to her. "Tell him to leave." Kate's eyes darted between them. She looked trapped, torn between doing what was expected and doing what she needed. Her voice was barely audible. "I don't." "Tell him," Meghan repeated, sharper this time. Kate's lips trembled. She looked down at the floor, and then Daniel did, something he absolutely wasn't supposed to do. He spoke directly to Kate, not to Meghan. "To Kate, Your Royal Highness," he said gently. "Are you all right?" The question hung in the air. Simple, direct, impossible to ignore. Kate looked up at him. Her eyes were glassy with tears, but there was something else there now. Something that hadn't been there a moment ago. Strength. "Oh, no," she whispered. "I'm not." Meghan's head snapped toward her. "Excuse me?" Kate straightened slightly, slowly, like someone waking up from a nightmare. "I'm not all right, Kate, I'm not all right," Kate repeated, louder this time. Her voice was still shaking, but there was steel beneath it now. "And I need a moment. Alone." Meghan's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, anger, disbelief. "You can't be serious." "I am." "After everything I need you to leave," Kate said. Her hands were still trembling, but she'd uncrossed her arms. She was standing straighter now. "Please." The word please was purely habit. British politeness drilled in so deep it couldn't be removed even in moments of crisis. But the message was clear. "Get out." Meghan stared at her. For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. Then Meghan let out a short, bitter laugh. "Fine, have it your way." She grabbed her bag from the chair and headed toward the door. But as she passed Daniel, she stopped. "What?" "You just made a very big mistake," she said quietly. Daniel met her eyes. "I'll take that risk, ma'am." Meghan's jaw clenched. Then she swept past him and disappeared down the corridor, heels clicking sharply against the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel remained in the doorway. Kate remained by the window. Neither of them moved. Finally, Kate spoke. "You shouldn't have done that." "Probably not, ma'am. She'll report you. You'll lose your position, maybe." Kate turned to look at him fully now. Her eyes were still wet, but the tears had stopped. "Why did you?" Daniel considered the question. He could give her the official answer. The protocol about safety and duty, but that wasn't the real reason. And something told him Kate deserved the truth, 'cause no one should be spoken to like that. He said simply, "Duchess or not, you're still a person." Kate's face crumpled slightly, not in sadness and relief, like she'd been waiting years to hear someone say that. She nodded slowly. "Thank you." "No thanks needed, ma'am." Another silence. This one felt different, lighter somehow. "What's your name?" Kate asked. "Daniel, ma'am." "Guardsman Daniel Morrison, Daniel." She repeated it softly as if committing it to memory. "I won't forget this." Daniel inclined his head. "Is there anything you need, ma'am? Water? Should I call someone?" Kate shook her head. "No, I just... ... I just need a few minutes." "Understood." Daniel stepped back toward the door. "I'll be right outside if you need anything." Kate smiled then. It was small, fragile, but real. Thank you, Daniel. He left the room, pulling the door most of the way closed behind him. Then he returned to his post in the corridor. Hands behind his back, eyes forward. The picture of discipline. But his mind was racing. He'd just interfered in a private royal matter. He'd contradicted a duchess. He'd essentially taken sides in what was clearly an ongoing conflict. His career was probably over, but when he thought about Kate's face, the way she'd been crumbling under Meghan's words, the way she'd looked at him with such desperate gratitude, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Some things were more important than careers. 15 minutes later, the door opened. Kate emerged, looking more composed. She'd fixed her hair and wiped away the tear stains. To anyone else, she'd look perfectly normal, but Daniel could still see the exhaustion in her eyes. She paused as she passed him. Daniel. Yes, ma'am? Whatever happens, thank you. Then she walked away, back straight, head high, and Daniel knew his life was about to get very complicated. The summons came 2 hours later. A senior officer appeared in the corridor, face expressionless. Guardsman Morrison, you're wanted in the security office. Now. Daniel had expected this. He followed without question, keeping his face neutral. Around him, other guards glanced his way. Word traveled fast in the palace. They all knew something had happened. They just didn't know what yet. The security office was small and windowless. Inside sat Commander Roberts, head of palace security, and another man Daniel didn't recognize. Civilian clothes. Serious expression. Probably internal affairs, Sit Roberts said. Daniel sat. Roberts leaned back in his chair, studying Daniel with the kind of look that could peel paint. Want to tell me what happened this afternoon? I heard raised voices in the private wing, sir. I assessed the situation and determined intervention was necessary. Intervention, Roberts repeated the word slowly. You intervened in a private conversation between two members of the royal family. I ensured the safety and well-being of all parties involved, sir. By whose authority? My own judgment, sir. The civilian leaned forward. Guardsman Morrison, do you understand the seriousness of what you did? You entered a private room without permission. You contradicted a senior royal. You inserted yourself into family matters. Daniel met his eyes. Yes, sir. I understand then. Why did you do it? Daniel paused. He could lie, spin it, make it sound more official than it was. But something told him these men would see through that immediately, because someone needed help, sir, and no one else was there to give it. Roberts and the civilian exchanged a glance. Something unspoken passed between them. The Duchess of Sussex has filed a formal complaint, Roberts said. She's demanding your immediate dismissal. Says you were insubordinate, disrespectful, that you deliberately undermined her authority. Daniel's stomach sank, but he kept his face neutral. I see, sir. She's also threatening to go public with this. Make it a media issue. Of course she was. Daniel should have seen that coming. Roberts pulled out a tablet and slid it across the desk. Before we make any decisions, I need you to watch something. Daniel looked down. On the screen was security footage, black and white. Time-stamped from earlier that afternoon, it showed the corridor outside the room where the confrontation had happened. Roberts pressed play. The footage showed Daniel at his post, then Meghan entering the room, the door closing. Several minutes passing, then Daniel's posture, changing head tilting slightly, listening, and then Daniel moving toward the door, entering. The audio was faint, but voices could be heard. Raised voices. One sharp and cutting. One broken and pleading. Roberts stopped the video. We have cameras throughout the palace, including audio in most corridors. Not in the private rooms themselves, but the walls aren't as thick as people think. He pressed play again. This time the audio was enhanced. Meghan's voice came through clearly. You're weak. You've always been weak. Kate's voice barely audible. Please, just stop. The civilian leaned forward. Keep watching. Out. The footage continued. Daniel entering. The confrontation. Daniel refusing to leave. And then Kate's voice, stronger now. I'm not all right. I need you to leave." Robert stopped the video. The room was silent. "The Duchess of Sussex wants you fired," Robert said. "But the Duchess of Cambridge has made it very clear that if that happens, she'll personally intervene. She's also indicated that this wasn't an isolated incident." Daniel blinked. He hadn't expected that. The civilian spoke next. "We've been aware of tensions between the two duchesses for some time, but this is the first documented evidence of verbal abuse. The Duchess of Cambridge has been reluctant to make formal complaints, but after today she's decided enough is enough." Roberts leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen, Morrison. Officially, you will receive a written warning for breaking protocol. That goes in your file. Unofficially," he paused, "you did the right thing. And the Duchess of Cambridge has personally requested that you remain on her security detail." Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. "Sir, she trusts you. That matters." Roberts stood. "But understand, you've now made yourself part of a very complicated situation. The Duchess of Sussex isn't going to let this go. She's going to push back. Hard, and you're going to be caught in the middle." "I understand, sir." "Do you?" Roberts looked at him seriously. "Because this isn't just about protocol anymore. This is about palace politics. About public perception. About two women who are supposed to present a united front, but can barely be in the same room together. And now you're part of that story." The civilian stood as well. "If asked, you say nothing. To anyone, no interviews. No social media. No talking to friends or family about what happened. This stays internal. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Roberts walked Daniel to the door. Before opening it, he said quietly, "For what it's worth. You showed good judgment today. Not many people would have stepped in." "Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. This isn't over." Daniel returned to his quarters that evening, mind spinning. He'd kept his job. He hadn't been fired. Kate had stood up for him. But Roberts was right, this wasn't over. And as Daniel lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped into. Something much bigger than a simple confrontation in a hallway. He'd stepped into a war. And whether he liked it or not, he'd just chosen a side. 3 days passed. 3 days of whispers. Sideways glances. Other guards asking questions Daniel couldn't answer. He'd been reassigned to Kate's detail, as Roberts had said, which meant he was now part of the small team that accompanied her to public events, private meetings, and family functions. It also meant he saw firsthand what Kate was dealing with the first day. At a charity event, Meghan arrived late. She made a point of greeting everyone in the room except Kate. The snub was subtle but deliberate. Kate smiled through it, ever gracious. But Daniel saw the way her shoulders tensed. The second day at a family dinner, Meghan criticized Kate's choice of dress in front of several staff members. "Bit outdated, isn't it?" she'd said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Kate had simply thanked her for the feedback and changed the subject. The third day was when things escalated. It was a private garden party at Kensington Palace. Small gathering. Mostly family and close staff. Daniel was positioned near the terrace, watching the crowd. Kate was speaking with Prince William near the rose garden. She was laughing at something he'd said. Relaxed for the first time in days, then Meghan approached. Daniel couldn't hear the conversation from where he stood, but he could read body language, and what he saw made his jaw tighten. Meghan leaned in close, saying something to Kate. Kate's smile faltered. William stepped forward, saying something sharp. Meghan turned to him, her expression cold. The conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds. But when it ended, Kate's face had gone pale. William looked furious, and Meghan walked away with a satisfied smirk. Kate excused herself and headed toward the palace. Daniel followed at a respectful distance. She went to a small sitting room off the main hall and closed the door. Daniel stood outside debating. Should he check on her? Would that be overstepping? Then he heard it. Quiet, muffled, but unmistakable, crying. Daniel made a decision. He knocked softly. Your Royal Highness? It's Daniel. Pause. Then, come in. He opened the door. Kate was sitting on a small sofa, hands covering her face. She'd been crying, but she was trying to compose herself. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, wiping her eyes. "I just needed a moment." "No apologies necessary, ma'am." Daniel closed the door behind him and stood respectfully near it. "Is there anything I can do?" Kate laughed bitterly. "Unless you can make her disappear, I don't think so." It was the first time Daniel had heard her say anything directly negative about Meghan. She immediately looked horrified at herself. "I shouldn't have said that." "Said what, ma'am?" "I didn't hear anything." Kate looked at him, and despite everything, she smiled slightly. "You're very kind, Daniel. Just doing my job, ma'am." Kate shook her head. "No, your job is to stand at doors and look intimidating. You don't have to care. But you do." Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Kate stood and walked to the window. "She told me I'm a terrible mother. Just now in front of William. Said I'm too soft with the children. That I'm raising them to be weak." Daniel's hands clenched behind his back. "That's not true, ma'am, isn't it?" Kate's voice was small. "Maybe she's right. Maybe I am too soft. Too weak. Too ... ma'am." Daniel's voice was firm now. "I've watched you for 3 days. I've seen how you handle pressure. How you smile when people are cruel. How you put everyone else's comfort before your own. That's not weakness. That's strength." Kate turned to look at him, eyes glistening. "Anyone can be harsh," Daniel continued. "Anyone can tear others down. It takes real strength to stay kind when people give you every reason not to be." Kate's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different. Not tears of pain, tears of relief, of being seen. "Why is she doing this?" Kate whispered. "What did I do to make her hate me so much?" Daniel wished he had an answer, but he didn't. Some people just couldn't stand to see others happy, successful, loved. It threatened them somehow. "I don't know, ma'am, but I do know it's not your fault." Kate nodded slowly. She took a deep breath, composing herself. When she turned back to him, she was the Duchess again, poised, controlled. "Thank you, Daniel, for listening, and for being here, always, ma'am." As Daniel left the room and returned to his post, he made a silent promise. He didn't know how this situation would end, didn't know what Meghan's next move would be, but he knew one thing for certain. He would never let Kate face it alone. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. There was a major public event, a gala for one of Kate's charities. Hundreds of guests. Media everywhere. The kind of event where every word and gesture would be analyzed and photographed. Kate had been dreading it. Daniel could tell. She'd been quieter than usual in the days leading up to it. More withdrawn? "She'll be there," Kate had said to William that morning. Daniel had overheard them talking. "And she'll find a way to ruin it. She always does." William had assured her everything would be fine, that he'd stay close, that security would handle any issues. But William didn't know what Daniel knew. Didn't see what Daniel saw. The gala started smoothly. Kate gave a beautiful speech about the charity's work. The crowd loved her. Donations were flooding in. Everything was perfect until Meghan arrived. She came late, deliberately. Made a grand entrance that drew attention away from Kate. She wore a dress that was almost identical to Kate's, but just different enough to make Kate's look outdated by comparison. It was calculated, cruel, and effective. The media immediately started comparing them. The photos, the dresses. Who looked better? Who wore it best? Kate saw it happening in real time. Saw the cameras shifting. Saw the attention sliding away from the charity and onto the rivalry. Everyone loved to obsess over. Her face remained perfectly composed. But Daniel saw her hands. Clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. The evening dragged on. Every interaction between Kate and Meghan was strained. Every photo op was a competition. And through it all, Kate kept smiling, kept gracious, kept playing the role. But then came the moment that changed everything. They were in a private corridor, away from the main event. Kate had stepped out to take a breath, to have 5 minutes of peace. Meghan followed her, Daniel was 10 feet behind, maintaining his position. But when he saw Meghan corner Kate, he moved closer. "Quite the performance tonight," Meghan said. "You almost look genuine up there." Kate didn't respond. Just tried to move past. Meghan blocked her path. "What? Nothing to say?" No polite British response? "Please, Meghan, not tonight." "Why not tonight? Because there are cameras? Because people might actually see what you're really like?" Kate's voice shook. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to admit it. Admit that you're not the perfect princess everyone thinks you are. Admit that you're just as fake as the rest of them." "I've never claimed to be perfect." "No, you just let everyone believe it." Poor Kate. Sweet Kate. The people's princess. Meghan's voice dripped with sarcasm. "It's pathetic." Kate's eyes filled with tears. "Why do you hate me so much?" "I don't hate you," Meghan said coldly. "I just see through you. And I'm tired of watching everyone else fall for the act." That's when Daniel stepped forward. "Ma'am, the Duchess has another engagement to attend to." Meghan whirled on him. "You again." "Of course. The loyal guard dog." Daniel kept his voice level. "If you'll excuse us, I don't excuse you," Meghan snapped. "You have no authority here. No right to interfere. With respect, ma'am, the Duchess needs to return to the event. She'll return when I'm finished talking to her." "No," Kate said suddenly. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I won't." Meghan's eyes widened. "What did you say?" Kate straightened her shoulders. The tears were still there, but something else was too. Something stronger. "I said no. I'm done with this. Done with your cruelty. Done with pretending it's normal. Done with letting you make me feel small." Meghan's face flushed with anger. "You can't speak to me like that." "Yes, I can. Because you're not better than me. You're not more important than me. And you certainly don't have the right to treat me this way." The corridor was silent. Daniel stood perfectly still, but inside he was cheering. Meghan looked stunned. She'd clearly never expected Kate to push back. "You'll regret this," Meghan said finally. "No," Kate replied. "I don't think I will." And with that, Kate walked past her. Head high, back straight. Daniel followed, leaving Meghan standing alone in the corridor. They returned to the gala. Kate smiled, shook hands, thanked donors. But something had shifted. Daniel could see it. The other guests could see it. Kate wasn't playing a role anymore. She was being herself. Strong, confident, real, and the crowd loved her even more for it. Later that night, as Daniel walked Kate to her car, she stopped and turned to him. "Thank you," she said, "for being there. Again, always, ma'am." Kate smiled. A real smile this time. "I think I'm going to be okay now." And Daniel believed her. Because the woman standing in front of him wasn't the broken, tearful Duchess he'd found 2 weeks ago. This was someone who'd remembered her own strength. And once someone remembers that, nothing can break them again. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Within 48 hours, Meghan's behavior became an official palace matter. Kate had finally filed a formal complaint, backed by witness statements, including Daniel's. The security footage, the documented incidents, the pattern of abuse, it all came together into something that couldn't be ignored anymore. The palace handled it quietly, as they always did. No public statements. No media circus. Just private meetings and serious conversations behind closed doors. But the result was clear. Meghan was given a choice. Change her behavior, attend counseling, and make amends or face increasingly severe consequences, including potential removal from certain royal duties. Daniel never learned which option she chose. That information stayed at the highest levels. But he did notice that subsequent events were ... different. Meghan and Kate were scheduled separately. The joint appearances became rare, and when they did occur, there was distance. Protocol. Nothing warm, but nothing hostile either. A cold peace. Kate, meanwhile, transformed. Daniel watched it happen over the following weeks. The Duchess, who'd once been reduced to tears in a palace corridor, became someone stronger, more confident. She spoke up more in meetings, set boundaries, refused to be diminished. She was still gracious, still kind, still the Kate the public loved. But now there was steel beneath the softness. One afternoon, about a month after the gala, Kate asked to speak with Daniel privately. They met in the same sitting room where she'd broken down weeks earlier. "I've been thinking," Kate said, "about what you did, about the risk you took." "I was just doing what was right, ma'am." "You were doing more than that. You were standing up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves, at great personal cost." Daniel didn't know what to say to that. Kate continued, "I've spoken with William and with Palace Security. We're establishing new protocols. Better protection for staff and family members who witness or experience any form of harassment or abuse. Anonymous reporting systems. Mandatory training. Real accountability." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. That's excellent, ma'am. It's because of you," Kate said, "because you showed me that speaking up matters. That one person standing up can change everything." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "This is for you." Daniel opened it. Inside was a medal, the Royal Victorian Medal, given for personal service to the monarchy. "Ma'am, I can't. You can. And you will. You've served with honor and integrity. More than that, you've shown compassion when it mattered most. That deserves recognition." Daniel looked at the medal, throat tight. He'd never expected this. Never wanted recognition. He just wanted to help. "Thank you, ma'am." Kate smiled. "No, Daniel. Thank you." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "You know what I realized? When you stepped into that room that first day, you didn't just save me from one terrible afternoon. You reminded me that I didn't have to face things alone. That asking for help isn't weakness. That standing up for yourself isn't selfish. You would have found that strength on your own, ma'am. Baby, but it would have taken longer. And I would have suffered more in the meantime." Kate's eyes were bright. "You gave me permission to fight back. And that's changed everything." After she left, Daniel sat alone in the room for a long moment. He thought about that first day. The raised voices, the tears, the choice he'd made to step through that doorway. He'd thought he was just protecting one person. But he'd actually done something bigger. He'd broken a cycle, changed a pattern, shown that silence wasn't the only option. One small act of courage had rippled outward. And now, there were new protections in place. New systems. New hope that others wouldn't have to suffer in silence the way Kate had. That evening, Daniel walked through the palace grounds. The sun was setting, painting everything in gold and amber. He passed other guards, nodded to staff members, watched tourists taking photos outside the gates. Everything looked the same as it always had. But Daniel knew better. Beneath the surface, things had changed. Would keep changing. All because someone had decided to step forward instead of looking away. As Daniel returned to his post, he thought about the medal in his pocket, the recognition, the gratitude. But what mattered most wasn't any of that. What mattered was knowing that Kate was okay, that she'd found her voice again, that she'd remember her strength, and that the next time someone tried to make her feel small, she'd stand tall instead. Because that's what survivors did. They remembered. It grew. They refused to be broken. And sometimes, all it took was one person believing in them when they couldn't believe in themselves. Daniel resumed his position, hands behind his back, eyes forward, the picture of discipline. But inside, he was smiling. Because some stories don't end with grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. They end with quiet victories, with people finding themselves again, with systems changing, with hope restored. And that was the kind of ending worth protecting. The kind of ending that made everything, the risk, the controversy, the complications, completely worthwhile. One royal guard. One moment of courage. One choice to step forward instead of standing still. And the world, even just a small corner of it, became a little bit better because of it.